I sent the message right after takeoff. Nothing dramatic, nothing laced with desperate emojis or exclamation points. Just a plain line in the family group chat. Flight lands at 3:00 p.m. Can someone pick me up? That was all I asked for. No demands, no speeches, just a simple ride home. My husband had just been buried overseas, a military funeral with a folded flag pressed into my hands, a 21-gun salute splitting the air, and a casket that weighed more than anything I had ever carried, even though I wasn't the one lifting it. He had been my partner, my anchor, my husband for years. Years mostly spent apart, stolen by deployments and duty. We missed anniversaries, birthdays, whole seasons of life. But I never kept receipts. Love doesn't keep receipts. So I didn't expect them to throw me a parade, didn't expect banners at the gate. I only asked for a car ride from the airport. The reply came faster than the plane could climb to cruising altitude. My brother, we're busy. Try Uber. Just 3 words, but each one sharp enough to cut through bone. 2 minutes later, my mother chimed in. Why didn't you plan better? Not a single. How was the funeral? Not a single. We're so sorry for your loss. Not a we're proud of him. Not even a we're proud of you. Just cold replies, efficient, clean like trimming fat from meat. I stared at the phone in my lap as the plane rose above the clouds, and in that silence, a realization hit me. Grief wasn't the only thing hollowing me out. It was the truth blooming ugly in front of me. You think family holds you, but sometimes they hold the knife. I typed back 2 words, no worries. That was it. No begging, no guilt trip, just silence. When we landed hours later, I didn't cry. I didn't let myself. I pulled my coat tighter, walked past the baggage carousel, past all the other passengers rushing into waiting arms, hugging their people, clutching flowers. I stepped straight into a black SUV, already waiting at the curb. Because here's the thing, while my family was busy dismissing me while they were judging me for not planning better, they had no idea who else had flown back with me. They had no idea what I had brought with me from the base, or who was waiting in the shadows of the headlines. That night, I didn't text the group again. I didn't post a single word online. But when the 9 o'clock news aired, when televisions across the city flickered to life, when their phones lit up with live coverage, I know they saw it. I know they dropped their forks at the dinner table. I know my mother's wine glass slipped and shattered against tile. And I know one thing for sure, they will never forget what I did next. The clip was short, less than 60 seconds. That was all it took. In the middle of the evening broadcast, right after the weather, right before sports, the anchor's voice filled living rooms. His tone was calm, trained, the kind of calm that can deliver tragedy and triumph in the same steady breath. Today, a widow returned home from her husband's overseas military burial alone but not unnoticed. The footage rolled. The black SUV at the airport curb. Me stepping out, still dressed in black, the folded flag clutched tightly against my chest like it was the only thing keeping me upright. And behind me, 3 Marines in full dress uniform, 2 women and 1 man's shoulders, squared backs, straight shields in human form. They hadn't just escorted me. They stood behind me, silent, resolute, a wall of loyalty where blood had failed. The camera zoomed in just enough to catch the moment I turned and handed something small to one of them. A white ribboned box. The anchor explained. In an unexpected twist, the widow was met not by family, but by her husband's former unit, who arranged a military-led tribute and personal escort. She declined interviews but left behind one handwritten note for the press. Then my words filled the screen. My handwriting projected in black ink. If you ever find yourself standing alone at the edge of grief, don't look for the people who left you there. Look for the ones who show up anyway. RM. They didn't say my full name. They didn't need to. Everyone in that group chat knew exactly who those initials belonged to. The final shot lingered, me walking away between 2 Marines, head held high, back straight, climbing into the black SUV. No tears, no pleading, no begging for sympathy. Just truth, dignified and unshakable, broadcast into every home that mattered. In my mother's kitchen, in my brother's condo, on the phones of relatives who hadn't bothered to call. Silence fell heavy, because they had sent a message when they left me alone. And now so had I. The group chat didn't ping for the next 24 hours. No apologies, no reactions, not even the coward's reply of "just saw the news." But silence tells its own story. Their silence was the sound of panic, of shame, of something unraveling they couldn't control. The first crack came from my sister-in-law, a private message. "Was that you on Channel 5? I didn't answer. She didn't ask again, but word was already spreading faster than wildfire. The image of me flanked by Marine's eyes hollow but spine unbending was everywhere. My mother tried to seize control first. She posted an old photo on Facebook. Me and my brother as kids, maybe 7 or 8, holding hands at a 4th of July parade. Caption family above all, always. She wanted to rewrite the script to bury the evidence under nostalgia. But she didn't expect the replies. The top comment came from a stranger. "You didn't even pick her up from the airport." That reply was shared and reshared, not by me, but by people who still believed loyalty was a two-way street. Then it was my brother's turn. A text, one line. "Didn't realize it was that serious. You should have said something." I read it twice, then laughed once, bitter and sharp, as if grief required an RSVP. As if burying my husband in a foreign country far from anyone I loved was something I should have packaged better for their convenience. I typed a reply. Deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. Finally, I sent 3 words. "You made your choice." That was all. No anger, no punctuation, just a mirror held up to him. The best part, I didn't need to say anything else. Because the media had already asked for a follow-up segment. They wanted me not just to walk silently this time, but to speak, to share, to give voice to what had happened. And I had every intention of doing it. I hadn't planned on speaking publicly. I hadn't wanted to. But silence protects the wrong people. Silence shields the guilty, buries the wounds, makes the victims carry the weight alone. So when the news station called again and asked if I'd be willing to share a widow's voice, I said yes. Not for sympathy, not for views, for truth. The interview was taped in a quiet studio. No flashing lights, no glossy backdrops. Just me, a microphone, and an anchor across the table, with soft eyes and a steady tone. He leaned forward, careful with his first question. "What happened when you landed?" I drew in a breath, my throat tight. Then I spoke the line I had been holding in my chest for days. I buried my husband with honor and came home to silence. The room froze. Even the cameraman stopped shifting his weight. I told them everything. How I had sent one simple message to my family. How the replies had been colder than the January wind outside that terminal. How nobody showed up, but 3 Marines did. How strangers in uniform stood behind me, while blood relatives looked away. I didn't name names. I didn't drag them publicly. But I did say, this blood doesn't make someone family. Presence does. The segment aired that night, prime time, 6 minutes long, no music, no dramatic montage, just me, raw, honest, steady. The response was immediate. Strangers reached out, widows, veterans, people who told me they too had come home to empty driveways and quiet rooms. People who said they had carried folded flags alone too. The community erupted with empathy, with understanding. But the silence on that group chat, that silence was different. My mother left it disappearing without a word. My brother changed the group name from family to the stripped-down group. As for me, I archived it. Because once you've been abandoned in your worst moment, you stop begging people to become who they should have been all along. And that's when I realized this story wasn't revenge, it was record. A record that now lived beyond their control. The letters started small, almost hesitant, like they weren't sure if they were allowed to enter my life. One appeared in my mailbox, no return address, just careful handwriting on a plain white envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "I saw you on the news. My husband never made it back. You made me feel less alone." I sat at my kitchen table and read those words until they blurred. I didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but in that moment I felt her grief press against mine like 2 hands meeting in the dark. And then it spread. Local veteran groups began sharing the clip. A Gold Star Mothers page reposted the entire segment. A military spouses network reached out offering support I never asked for, but suddenly realized I needed flowers, meals, shoulders that understood the weight of folded flags. For years I had carried the silence of a family who never showed up. Now strangers I had never met were lining up at my door saying, "We see you, we hear you, you are not alone." A week later, a candlelight vigil appeared in my inbox, organized by strangers, held in a park downtown. I didn't want to go, but something pulled me there. I stood in the back hood, pulled up, watching dozens of people, widows, veterans, neighbors, teenagers, who had only seen war through headlines, gather with candles that flickered like tiny defiant flames against the night. They weren't mourning with me. They were standing for me. For every person who had ever sat alone at an airport curb when they should have been met with open arms. Someone began to sing. A girl, no older than 16, her voice cracking on the line. "I'll carry you home." I almost broke right there, the tears threatening to spill, but then I saw something that steadied me again. My brother. Standing at the edge of the crowd, hands shoved in his pockets, his head hanging low. He didn't speak, didn't walk over. But he saw it. All of it. He saw how strangers carried what blood refused to touch. He saw the candles, the signs, the quiet dignity of a community rising where family had failed. And for the first time, I think he realized just how deep the wound he helped carve truly was. The next morning, a text arrived from him. Didn't think it'd get this big. That was all. No greeting, no apology, just disbelief, like grief was supposed to stay small, private, invisible. I stared at the screen, thought of everything I wanted to scream back then, typed one line instead. That's the thing about grief. It either builds walls or it builds bridges. You picked your side. No reply. None was needed. Because by then the story had already outgrown the people who abandoned me. In the weeks that followed, the letters didn't stop. The flowers didn't stop. Neither did the quiet strength of strangers who saw in me a reflection of their own survival. And something inside me shifted. I didn't want to just be a story passed around the news cycle, a cautionary tale of family betrayal and public dignity. I wanted to build something lasting, something that would make sure no one else ever stood alone on that curb like I did. It began with a name, the Welcome Project, a nonprofit for military spouses returning home alone. We organized airport pickups, meal trains, care teams. Not pity, not sympathy. Support the kind that shows up when it matters most. Word spread faster than I could have imagined. Volunteers signed up from 5 states in the first 3 days. Someone donated a van. Another offered her event space for free. By the second week, our first welcome team was standing at JFK holding a handmade sign that read, "We've got you." That photo went viral. A widow walking into the arms of strangers who refused to let her walk alone. And just like that, the Welcome Project became more than an idea. It became a revolution. The day after that photo spread, my phone buzzed with a call I didn't expect. My mother. I let it ring. She left a voicemail, her voice breaking by the second sentence. "I didn't know how to help. I didn't think you'd want us there." I deleted it, not out of anger, out of peace, because I didn't need it anymore. Some wounds don't close because someone finally apologizes. They close because you stop bleeding for people who kept watching you drown. My brother reached out too, but not with words. A donation receipt appeared in my inbox. Anonymous, small. I knew it was him, but I didn't reply. Because this wasn't about guilt or buying forgiveness. It was about truth, the kind that builds vans, packs, care kits, and holds signs at arrival gates. Sometimes you don't burn bridges. You just build better ones somewhere else. When people asked me what started it, all this project, this movement, I always smiled and said, "A flight that landed at 3:00 p.m. and nobody came." Reporters called it a quiet revolution. One article made the front page. The headline, "From Grief to Ground Crew, How One Widow Changed Coming Home." The photo showed me at a welcome event, arms around a young woman holding a folded flag. Her smile fragile but real. The caption etched beneath it burned into my memory. How one woman's betrayal became another's belonging. The morning it ran, I got a text from an unknown number. Just a screenshot of the article, no words. I knew the number, my mother's. That evening, I was invited to speak at a local memorial for military families. Not a performance, not a rehearsed speech, just my story. I stood at the podium, candlelight flickering across rows of faces, some proud, some shattered, all listening. I spoke of Liam, my husband. His laugh, his letters, the way he once told me, "If something ever happens to me, don't let silence win." And I hadn't. I told them about the flight, the message, the replies that cut deeper than war wounds. I told them how I came home alone but didn't stay that way. How strangers built a bridge where family left a chasm. When I stepped off the stage, someone touched my elbow, a woman in pearls, eyes glistening. "My daughter was on your first welcome pickup. You saved her." I gripped her hand tight, like that moment was all we needed to stitch the world back together. And then in the distance I saw them. My mother, my brother, standing by a tree. Not part of the crowd, not on the list, not invited. Just watching. I didn't wave, didn't smile. I let the space between us speak for itself, filled with everything they never said when it mattered. Because sometimes punishment isn't rage. It's silence. It's being replaced. It's watching strangers clap for the daughter you left at the gate. I used to believe closure would come in the form of an apology. A text, a call, maybe a trembling moment at the kitchen table where the people who hurt me finally whispered the words they should have spoken when it mattered most. But that moment never came. What came instead was quieter, lonelier, and somehow truer. Closure arrived one evening as I stood in my kitchen folding a Welcome Project t-shirt into a care kit for another widow I had never met. The house was still, no group chat notifications, no waiting for validation that never belonged to me. Just silence. And yet this time, it was mine. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find two volunteers dropping off supplies. A young couple, both former military newlyweds. She hugged me like we had known each other our whole lives. In some ways we had. Not through shared blood, but through the truth that binds survivors of silence. That moment pressed deeper into me than any hollow apology ever could. Because family is not always written in DNA, it is written in presence, in the showing up, in the hands that reach for you when yours are empty. I never replied to my mother's last message. I never acknowledged my brother's anonymous donation, and I never reopened that group chat. Because some people bury you in silence and others lift you out of it. And once you've been lifted, you don't crawl back into the grave they dug. I've thought a lot about what it means to rebuild. Rebuilding isn't about dragging the people who abandoned you back into your story. It's about creating something new in the space they left hollow. It's about deciding that their absence is no longer a wound, it's room for something stronger to grow. The Welcome Project wasn't built on revenge. It was built on the bones of grief, the kind that teaches you not to wait at terminals for people who will never come. It was built for the next woman who sits in an airport chair alone, staring at the arrivals board with tears she refuses to let fall. It was built so that when her phone buzzes with silence, mine will buzz with volunteers saying, "We've got her." And one day, when the people who abandoned you watch from the sidelines, when their phones light up with stories you never send directly, when strangers chant your name, and they realize your story doesn't include theirs, they will understand. Too late, but they will. I tell this to every woman who asks me how to survive the loneliness. I tell her what I learned that afternoon. When my plane touched down and no one came, you don't rebuild by waiting for them. You rebuild by becoming what they weren't. You become the one who shows up. And when you do, you'll realize you were never as alone as they made you feel. Because presence builds families that blood alone never could. And silence, no matter how cruel, can be turned into something sacred if you decide it will be. So now when I walk through airports, I sometimes see the pickups happening. The handmade signs, the hugs, the strangers carrying bags that aren't theirs. And every time I whisper to myself, this is what love looks like when silence fails. And I think of Liam, my husband, the man whose flag rests on my mantle. He once told me, if something ever happens to me, don't let silence win. I didn't. I never will. So if you are listening now, maybe because your own grief has hollowed you, maybe because your own family has gone silent, hear this: silence doesn't define you, betrayal doesn't end you, and abandonment is not the final chapter. You have the power to build new bridges, new families, new stories that stretch far beyond the ones who failed you. That is what I did. That is what the Welcome Project became. And that is what you can do too. If my story has touched you, if it gave you a little light in the dark, I ask you to share it. Like this video, so more people can hear it. Subscribe if you want to walk with me through more stories like mine, and leave a comment below, because maybe your story is the one someone else needs to survive.